You're watching Northern Crimes.
Washington State is well known for its evergreen forests, rugged mountains, and fast-paced city life. But it also has a darker side, with a history marked by unsolved crimes and chilling mysteries. These often forgotten stories reveal the sinister undercurrents of human nature and the challenges of solving decades-old crimes. Today, we'll explore some of these gripping tales, ranging from tragic murders to unexplained disappearances. This is the true story of 10 unsolved cold cases from Washington State, and this is Northern Crimes. In the summer of 1971, 21-year-old Washington State University student Joyce LePage vanished, leaving behind a mystery that would haunt the community. 9 months later, her skeletal remains were discovered, wrapped in a green carpet, deepening the enigma of her unsolved murder. Joyce Margaret LePage was a vibrant junior at WSU. She was known for her athleticism, intelligence, and friendly nature. Standing 5'9" with long light brown hair, she was well liked on campus. Joyce held a private pilot's license and was taking skydiving lessons with ambitions that matched her adventurous spirit. On July 22, 1971, Joyce was last seen alive after her friends dropped her off at her apartment in Pullman, Washington. She had a skydiving lesson planned for the next day, but never showed up. Her car was found abandoned 10 days later with her shoes and purse inside. Then, in April 1972, a teenager discovered Joyce's skeletal remains wrapped in a green shag carpet in Wawaii Canyon, 10 miles from Pullman. The carpet was traced back to Stevens Hall, a WSU dormitory where Joyce frequently spent time. Authorities believe Joyce was murdered inside Stevens Hall, a dormitory under renovation that summer. She was known to sneak into the building to play the piano and write letters. Investigators think she was stabbed, wrapped in a military blanket in the dormitory carpet, then dumped in the remote ravine. Despite interviewing multiple suspects and re-examining evidence, the case remained unsolved. Serial killer Ted Bundy was briefly considered a suspect, but investigators now believe Joyce's killer was someone that she knew. The lack of forensic technology at the time hindered progress, and no arrests were made. Joyce's murder remains the oldest active unsolved case in Whitman County. Her family continues to seek justice, offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. Despite the passage of nearly 5 decades, the mystery of what happened to Joyce endures, with no clear answers in sight. In 1979, Kistemaker Simon Ben Kistemaker, a 26-year-old Dutch traveler, embarked on an American road trip that turned tragic. His body was found months later in a remote Washington gravel pit, turning what began as an adventurous dream into a nightmare with no end. Ben Kistemaker was a Dutch adventurer eager to explore America. After arriving in the U.S. in May 1979, he bought a blue and white 1968 Chevy van and began a cross-country journey. Picking up hitchhikers along the way, his journey took him through Florida, Texas, California, and up the Pacific coast towards Vancouver, BC. In September 1979, Ben's van was found abandoned near mile marker 233 on Highway 101 in Oregon, out of gas and unlocked. Inside were his passport, identification, and a diary with a final entry written in a cramped style, suggesting distress. Despite these alarming clues, Ben was missing. On Christmas Day, 3 months later, hunters found his body in an old gravel pit near Rockport, Washington, over 8 hours from where his van had been found. Ben had been shot in the head, likely executed at close range, and his body was left in the pit. The investigation into Ben's murder was riddled with contradictions and dead ends. The distance between the van and his body suggested an abduction, but no evidence of a struggle was found. The fact that his personal items were left behind added to the mystery. Why would his killer leave such important clues? Despite collaboration between multiple law enforcement agencies, no suspects were definitively identified. The case grew cold, leaving many questions unanswered, including whether Ben was targeted or simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Over 40 years later, Ben's murder remains unsolved. His family in the Netherlands still hopes for justice, but modern forensic technology has yet to yield new leads. The sheriff's office considers the case open, but it remains a haunting mystery with no clear path to a resolution. In October 1988, 17-year-old Tracy West disappeared on her way to work in Shelton, Washington. Her motorcycle was found overturned on a trail, but Tracy was missing. 6 years later, her remains were discovered in a remote wooded area, leaving behind a mystery that still haunts Shelton. Tracy West was a high school senior living in Shelton, a close-knit logging town. Known for her outgoing personality and dedication to her job at a local restaurant, Tracy often rode her motorcycle to work, taking a well-traveled dirt road through the woods. She was a responsible, well-liked young woman with a promising future. On October 20, 1988, Tracy left home around 4 p.m. and headed to work. When she didn't arrive, her manager alerted her family, who reported her missing. Shortly after midnight, her motorcycle was found overturned on the trail with her helmet and glasses nearby. The scene appeared staged, but there was no sign of Tracy. Despite extensive searches and investigations, no trace of her was found until October 1994, when a hunter discovered a human skull in a remote wooded area 3 miles from where her motorcycle was found. The skull was confirmed to be Tracy's, and nearby, investigators found personal items, raising more questions than answers. Tracy's disappearance remained a cold case until her remains were found. The discovery of her skull and belongings in the remote woods suggested she was taken there after being abducted, but the identity of her abductor remains unknown. Theories have pointed to some local suspects, including the Johnson brothers and the Emery brothers, but no concrete evidence has linked them to the crime. The investigation struggled to gain momentum and no arrests were made. Detectives have periodically revisited the case, but no new leads have emerged. Tracy's murder continues to remain unsolved, and her family continues to seek justice. The community of Shelton still feels the weight of this unsolved crime, and local authorities continue to hope for new information that could finally bring closure. In March 1989, Bainbridge Island was rocked by a triple murder that left 3 young people dead. What seemed like a straightforward drug-related crime quickly became a tangled web of confessions, retractions, and unanswered questions, with only one of the killers ever brought to justice. The victims, J.D. Phillips, 23, Ty McCullough, 19, and Ann Rice, 19, were well-known residents of Bainbridge Island. On March 17, 1989, their lives were brutally cut short as they sat in McCullough's pickup truck on a secluded road. The trio was reportedly involved in the local drug scene, which presumably led to their violent deaths. On that fateful night, the three friends met in a remote area off Blakely Avenue. They were shot to death inside the truck, and their killers fled the scene, leaving behind a grisly crime. The motive appeared to be a drug-related dispute, possibly over a metal briefcase filled with cocaine. The bodies were discovered the next day, sparking a major investigation. The Kitsap County Sheriff's Office quickly identified 3 suspects, but bringing them to justice proved challenging. One suspect, Douglas Stanfield, confessed to his involvement, claiming that he and 2 others planned to steal the cocaine before things went wrong. However, Stanfield later recanted his confession, saying he made up the story while bored in jail. Despite his retraction, Stanfield struck a plea deal, pleading guilty to 2 of the murders in exchange for a lighter sentence. The other suspects were never convicted, leaving the case shrouded in mystery. The investigation was further complicated by unreliable witness testimonies and conflicting evidence, leading to ongoing speculation about the true events of that night. Today, the Bainbridge Island triple murders are officially considered solved, but many questions still remain. The 2 other suspects implicated by Stanfield were never brought to justice, leaving the victims' families with unresolved grief and the community with lingering doubts. The case is a reminder of how justice can sometimes be elusive, leaving scars that never fully heal. In 1993, the peaceful town of LaConner, Washington, was shattered by the brutal murder of 52-year-old Donna Arrasmith. Her death in a quaint gift shop left the community reeling and law enforcement scrambling for answers. Donna Arrasmith was a beloved member of the Mount Vernon community, known for her warm personality and dedication to her family. A mother of 4, Donna worked at Happy Valley Farms, a charming gift shop at LaConner's waterfront. She was twice divorced, but her life revolved around her children and her work. On July 26, 1993, Donna was closing the shop for the evening. Around 5:30 p.m., after chatting with a friend and the shop's owner, Donna Blades, loud noises were heard from the shop, including a woman shouting,
No, don't do that.
The noises were dismissed, and it wasn't until later that Donna's car was found still parked outside with the shop closed that something seemed wrong. Blades entered the shop using a master key, only to find Donna's body on the floor, brutally stabbed multiple times. This murder shocked the small town, which had never experienced anything like that. The investigation quickly involved multiple agencies. The crime scene was meticulously searched for clues, including a large section of vinyl flooring that might have held fingerprints or footprints. Divers scoured the nearby Swinomish channels for the murder weapon, but nothing was found. Despite these efforts, no solid leads emerged. Investigators struggled with the possibility that the murder was a robbery gone wrong, but the motive remained unclear. The lack of suspects and witnesses made this case difficult to solve, and it eventually went cold. Nearly 3 decades later, Donna's murder remains unsolved. Her children continue to live with the pain of not knowing who took their mother's life or why. The community of LaConner has changed, but the memory of Donna's tragic death lingers, a reminder of the violence that once shattered this town's peace. In January 1998, the quiet community of Big Lake, Washington was rocked by the murder of 30-year-old Geoff Reynolds. Found dead from a gunshot wound in his home, Geoff's case has remained unsolved for over 2 decades, leaving his family and the community searching for answers. Geoff Reynolds was a typical Gen X member, trying to find his path in life. Geoff was a man of many talents, working various jobs, including car repairs and dishwashing. He was also a passionate musician, playing bass in a band with his half-brother, Jamie Reynolds. On January 21, 1998, Deanna Combs returned home from work to find Geoff dead from a gunshot wound. The house showed no signs of forced entry, leading detectives to believe that Geoff likely knew his killer. The scene inside suggested a possible connection to the local drug trade, as drug paraphernalia, large amounts of cash, and scales were found scattered around. Despite these clues, the motive behind Geoff's murder remained unclear, and no suspects were definitively identified. The investigation into Geoff's murder was extensive, but ultimately frustrating for law enforcement. The presence of drugs in Geoff's home suggested a possible motive linked to the local drug trade, but no concrete evidence supported this theory. Over the years, the case went cold, with detectives left piecing together a complicated web of potential suspects and motives. Jamie Reynolds, Geoff's half-brother, has refused to let the case be forgotten, using his band to keep Geoff's memory alive and push for answers. More than 2 decades later, Geoff Reynolds' murder remains unsolved. Despite efforts to bring renewed attention to the case, including a feature on Washington's Most Wanted, the mystery of who killed Geoff and why continues to haunt those who knew him. On December 2, 2000, 50-year-old Sharon Christine Anderson left her home in Stanwood, Washington to run errands and do some Christmas shopping. She was supposed to return by 4:30 p.m., but she never did. Hours later, her locked vehicle was found at the Everett Mall, and Sharon was nowhere to be found. Sharon, known as Sherry, was a devoted mother, grandmother, and social worker living in Stanwood. She was married to John Anderson, a Boeing employee, and the couple shared a passion for Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Sherry was a reliable, hardworking woman who was loved by her family and friends. On the morning of December 2, 2000, Sherry left home around 9 a.m., planning to run errands and shop at the Everett Mall. She intended to return by 4:30 p.m. to attend a motorcycle show with her husband. When John woke up from a nap at 5:30 p.m., he realized Sherry hadn't returned. Her best friend, named Mary, found Sherry's silver Toyota 4Runner parked near the entrance of Mervyn's at the Everett Mall around 10 p.m. Inside the locked vehicle were Sherry's cell phone and gun, but there were no shopping bags. Since that day, there has been no activity on Sherry's credit card, bank accounts, or social security number, and no trace of her has ever been discovered. The disappearance of Sherry Anderson left investigators puzzled. Despite extensive searches around the mall and nearby areas, no clues were ever found. Friends and family, convinced that Sherry would never have walked away from her life, worked tirelessly to keep her case in the public eye. Flyers were spread across the Seattle area, and Sherry's story was featured on cold case playing cards distributed to inmates in Washington state prisons, but no substantial leads emerged. One theory suggests Sherry never made it inside the mall, and that her car was planted there, but this has never been confirmed. Suspicion also fell on a client who had threatened Sherry, but it's unclear if this lead was ever fully pursued. Over 20 years later, Sherry's disappearance remains unsolved. She's been declared legally dead, but her family and friends continue to search for the truth. This case remains a haunting mystery, with no resolution in sight. On July 11, 2006, a serene hike in the Snoqualmie Mount Baker National Forest turned tragic when Mary Cooper and her daughter, Susanna Stodden, were found shot dead on the Pinnacle Lake Trail. This senseless act of violence remains unsolved. Mary Cooper, a beloved school librarian, and her daughter, Susanna Stodden, an environmental studies graduate, shared a deep bond with nature. Both were known for their kindness and love for their family. Their passion for the outdoors made the Pinnacle Lake Trail a fitting choice for their hike on that fateful day. On the morning of July 11, 2006, Mary and Susanna set out for a day of hiking. Originally planning to hike Mount Pilchuck, they changed their itinerary due to concerns about snow and instead headed for Pinnacle Lake. Their bodies were discovered later that day on the trail, both shot in the head. The brutal nature of the crime shocked the community, and the partially removed clothing suggested a potential sexual assault, adding to the horror. The Snohomish County Sheriff's Office launched an extensive investigation but found few leads. Mary's husband, David Stodden, was initially considered a suspect, but he was cleared after passing multiple polygraph tests. Frustrated by the lack of progress, David took matters into his own hands, creating a documentary about the murders and offering a monetary reward for anybody who had information. Despite these efforts, no suspects were identified, and the case grew cold. The isolated location and lack of witnesses hindered the investigation, leaving detectives baffled. "18 years later, this case continues to remain unsolved. The Snohomish County Sheriff's Office continues to seek tips, but no new leads have emerged. The Pinnacle Lake murders are a haunting reminder of the violence that shattered 2 lives, and the mystery remains as deep as the forest where they were killed. In January 2007, the body of 37-year-old Karen Bodine was discovered on the side of Little Rock Road in Olympia, Washington. Strangled and left in a public location, her murder remains unsolved, leaving her family haunted by this heinous crime. Karen Bodine was a mother of 3, known for her fiery personality and deep love for her family. Her sudden and violent death left a void that has never been filled, affecting everyone who knew her. She was passionate, creative, and full of life, making her brutal murder all the more shocking. Karen spent the last hours of her life with a group of people in the early morning of January 22, 2007. Her body was discovered just hours later, dumped along Little Rock Road in a visible public location. The ligature used to strangle her was still around her neck, and the way her body was left suggests the killer wanted to shock the community and send a twisted message. The investigation identified several persons of interest, including individuals who'd been with Karen shortly before her death. However, despite extensive questioning and following hundreds of leads, no arrests were ever made. The DNA found on the ligature has been retested with new forensic technology, but the results have yet to point to a definitive suspect. Investigators have also considered the possibility that more than one person may have been involved, further complicating efforts to bring Karen's killer to justice. Karen's murder remains unsolved. Her daughters Carly and Taylor continue to seek justice, refusing to let their mother's case fade into obscurity. The Thurston County Sheriff's Office urges anyone with information to come forward, hoping that even the smallest detail could be the key to solving this tragic case. In February 2019, 20-year-old Matthew Anfeldt disappeared from his hometown of Grand Mound. Nearly 5 years later, the discovery of his remains deepened the mystery surrounding his death, leaving his family hoping for any trace of resolution. Matthew Daniel Anfeldt was born on January 27, 1999, in Washington State. Known for his close relationship with his family, especially his mother Sarah, Matthew was full of life and passionate about wrestling and music. Despite some struggles with substance abuse, he remained determined to build a better future. On February 28, 2019, Matthew spent the day with his sister, bowling and planning to watch movies at their family home. After leaving the room to retrieve his phone, Matthew never returned. Witnesses reported seeing him acting erratically, claiming people were after him and that his family had been killed. He was last seen at a Speedway grocery store where he appeared disheveled and scared. He fled before police could arrive, and that was the last time anyone saw him alive. The Thurston County Sheriff's Office launched an extensive search using drones, search dogs, and canvassing the area. Despite these efforts, no trace of Matthew was found. Investigators considered a mental health crisis, possibly exacerbated by drug use, and looked into an assault he suffered in December 2018 when he was attacked by 3 men who carved the word "kill" into his chest. Despite numerous tips and leads, the investigation stalled. Then, the discovery of Matthew's remains in a remote area nearly 5 years later raised new questions, particularly how he ended up so far from where he was last seen. On October 28, 2023, Matthew's remains were discovered by a hunter in a remote area of Thurston County. Investigators haven't been clear exactly where this was, only describing it as the, quote, Greater Rochester Grand Mound area. The investigation into how he died remains ongoing, with detectives seeking to determine if foul play was involved. The discovery has brought some closure to his family, but many questions remain unanswered. Washington State's unsolved cold cases linger as a reminder of lives cut short and mysteries unsolved. Each case is a story of human tragedy, a balance between darkness and light. The beauty of this region hides a darker reality, families waiting for closure, and communities hoping for the day that some of these mysteries are finally solved. Will the answers ever emerge, or will these cases remain forever shrouded in the mists of time? Only time will tell, but the search for truth continues.